Hello, 8th grade. So this is the To Kill a Mockingbird background information. Normally I would do this in 35 to 40 minutes, but I'm going to try and keep this short. So normally I have overheads that would go along with what I'm talking about with the Great Depression in the South. Instead, that is now a PowerPoint that you will want to take a brief look at later. So for this story, this takes place, the setting is the 1930s in the South in Alabama. Why is that important? Because the setting is considered an integral setting. We talked about that in 7th grade. It is crucial to the story. This story could not be told any other time or place. So what was happening then that was so important? The first thing, it was during the Great Depression. So the 1930s was suffering economically. In 1929, stock market crashed and it took everybody out financially. The South was already in pretty bad shape even after the Civil War. In the Civil War, they had to recover after all of the damage, but remember, most of their economy was based on slave labor. So now they have all of these farms and plantations, but they're having to pay people to work them. So financially, they still weren't recovering from the Civil War in the 1860s. So 70 years later, they were still in bad shape. It was so bad in the South, they were making about half of what people could make in the North. In one county in North Carolina, it was recorded that of the 5,000 farms in this one county, 3,500 farms were lost in 1 year. So 2 out of 3 farms were gone because they couldn't afford to keep them anymore. So that's how bad it was. One part of the setting as well is the fact that this is taking place during a time where Black people are free, they are no longer slaves, but there is segregation in play. Not until the 1960s with the Civil Rights Movement did you really get freedom for Black people. So in the 1930s, they were very much looked down upon. Economically, they made a fraction of what a white worker would make. They were often the first to be fired and the last to be hired. So a lot of times they would have awful jobs or would be very poor. Within that time, you also had a lot of racism that would come out in the form of things like the Ku Klux Klan. And there's pictures of that in the slides. You had hatred that took place in the form of racial slurs. Even in our book, you will see a word, several words that are not appropriate. When we go to read this, I will not say that word out loud. I will clear my throat instead. You'll be able to see it on the page or electronically or however you read it. But because God created man in his own image, and that includes every Black man, white man, any color under the sun, it's inappropriate and I will not say those words. So they are there, you will see them, but you will not hear them from me. But that was part of what was going on in the time. That's part of what makes this a challenging book. So that was a huge part. Let's talk about a few other things that are important for you to know. I will give you this in your handout type things. This is background information. This will be on a test coming sometime soon, sooner than you'd like. So something to know about the author. The author was a woman, Harper Lee. She was born in 1926 in Monroe, Alabama. And she studied law at the University of Alabama. Her father was a lawyer as well. She considered her law background good training to be a writer. She never became a lawyer, but she had that training. To Kill a Mockingbird was published in 1960, and it was awarded the Pulitzer Prize of Distinguished Fiction by an American author. Pulitzer Prize, not Nobel Peace Prize, not anything else. Pulitzer Prize is a fiction award. Okay, it was a bestseller for over 85 weeks. It was made into a movie that became an Academy Award-winning movie. That said, we will hopefully get to watch parts of the movie, but it is different than the book. So please don't just go out and watch the movie, or you're going to be in trouble. I'm warning you now. Couple other things. The book is set in the 1930s in a town called Maycomb, Alabama, and they are facing the effects of the Depression. So, because of those hard times, the communities needed to work together. The conflicts with the caste system, I'll explain that in a moment, and prejudices of the South caused conflict. So this small town would have fun characters that were quirky, but were often looked on with affection, and we'll talk about some of those as they go. There is a caste system, and a caste system just means that it's a social station that you can't get out of. It took place a lot in like England during medieval times, where if you were born poor, you were born a serf, that was how you were going to be your entire life. If you were born upper class nobility, that was how you were your entire life. Well, in the South, you had a different kind of caste system. You had the ladies and gentlemen. So you had these Southerners who had breeding. They may not have had money, but they were considered ladies or gentlemen. This is a huge theme. Then you would have the next kind of level down where they're not ladies or gentlemen, but because they're white, they're still kind of a little bit higher. These would be the poor white people, sometimes called poor white trash. And yet below them, you had black people. Black people may have been more respectable, but in this caste system that you couldn't get out of, they were considered beneath even the white trash. So race and your society, your status was huge in the South in that time. Point of view, Scout is the narrator. She's the one telling the story. She's a young girl, starts the beginning at about 6. It goes from the time she's 6 to about 8. Mostly she's an adult telling the story and what she remembered when she was young. There are very few points when she's able to kind of look back and say, oh, that's why this happened. The book is divided into 2 parts. The first part deals with the children's efforts to lure Boo Radley out of hiding. So it's kind of children's games. So you see her as a child, her older brother, a good friend. The second part focuses on her father, Atticus, and his failure to acquit Tom Robinson. So her father is assigned a case. He is a lawyer, just like the author's dad was a lawyer, where he has to defend a black man from an accusation of rape. So this is a very serious novel. There's not going to be graphic descriptions of anything on that part, but it is very serious, and I need you to take this seriously. Major themes. So themes are the lesson the author is trying to tell. There's going to be 3, and I would have this on the bulletin board. Prejudice. So learning how to judge in a reasonable fashion. Should we have a prejudice just based on color of skin or anything else? So there's class prejudice, racial prejudice, sexual prejudice are all stuck within this society, okay? We're going to talk about a motif. A motif is a picture that points to a theme. So some of the pictures that'll show that are standing in someone else's shoes. How do you prejudge? Well, if you can imagine yourself in someone else's shoes, all of a sudden you're not going to be prejudiced. Okay. Another picture, superstition. Okay. If you have all these superstitions about ghosts or other things, that's going to impact your prejudice. It's a picture that points to that. Secrets, keeping something a secret, part of that idea of prejudice. And then mockingbirds. Throughout this story, obviously, we're going to be talking about a mockingbird and how the title comes about. That's going to be a major part of what we learn. The next theme, so prejudice, we have growing up. That means finding your place. The children pass from innocence and isolation, and then they go into a flawed society. So they go from the children's games to a very serious topic. So the pictures that point to that, boundaries. You're crossing from childhood into adulthood. When should you worry or not? There are times that the dad says, don't worry. There are times he said, there are times to worry. Okay, this growing up, when do you learn that? And then finally, formal education. There are things you learn in a school and things you learn in life. Okay, last one. So we have prejudice, growing up. Last is courage is a theme. This is what the author is trying to teach. So learning how to fight, when to fight. Okay, The book talks about courage of physical things, but it also talks about moral courage, standing up for what is right. So what are some pictures of that? Weapons. What are the weapons of children? What are the weapons of others? Pictures of losing battles. Okay, so it's the courage, knowing you're going to lose this battle, but you still fight. And then again, this idea of when to worry. Still having courage, even if it is a time to worry. Okay, so a theme is a truth about life. Motifs are pictures that point us to that. Okay, that's kind of important background information. Just a few other things to make sure you know. You will have a vocab sheet. You will need to fill this in as we go throughout the story. You will also have a character list. As we go through the story, you're going to want to take notes on the different characters. In Flowers for Algernon, some of you struggled as to who was who. And again, we didn't read this in person, so I understand that's a struggle. But please take notes on the characters. Last but not least, instead of DOL, and I'm not 100% sure how I'll do this, you will get notes each day. So we will read about 2 chapters each day. There's a chance this will be homework. I will try and do at least some in Google Hangouts or some form where if you would like to hear me read it, I can read it to you. So there will be some kind of reading. The next day, there will be notes that you need to take. The notes are going to talk about the characters, the events, but it's also going to talk about the themes and images and motifs. It will include page numbers. And the reason this is so important is you will have another 5-paragraph essay. But here you're going to use quotes from an entire book. You do not want to sit and flip through the whole book to find quotes. So you will have in your notes page numbers of important quotes to help you along the way. Okay, so you're going to need to do reading. You need to keep up on vocab, on the characters, and on these notes that I will give each day. There will be pop quizzes throughout the story, where if you don't read it, it's going to be really clear very quickly that you didn't read it. Okay? That's the most important things I had to tell you. I did it in about 12 and a half minutes. Not bad. If you have questions, please contact me. I really do want to help you get through this.